June 1944. Europe hangs in a heavy, unnatural silence. A silence so deep it feels like the continent itself is holding its breath, waiting for something colossal and irreversible to break across its battered landscape. And in the center of this tightening storm stands Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, a commander both respected and feared, a man whose instinct for war has become so sharp it borders on prophecy. For months he had raced through occupied France like a restless ghost, moving from bunker to bunker, climbing observation towers, inspecting every stretch of sand from Dunkirk to Normandy, all the while sensing an invisible pressure building across the Channel. Rommel knew the Allies were coming. He could almost feel them as a distant rumble beneath the earth. And as he surveyed the Atlantic Wall, Hitler's so-called impregnable fortress, he felt only dread. The defenses were too thin, the guns too few, the troops too inexperienced. The Reich was exhausted, stretched, crumbling from within. He demanded more mines, more wire, more artillery. He pushed men to reinforce positions day and night. He pleaded with Berlin for speed and coordination. And yet, behind closed doors, Germany's leadership descended into chaos. Hitler refused to relinquish control. Goering boasted of air power that no longer existed. And other generals clung to fantasies that the invasion would strike at Calais, not Normandy. Rommel's warnings became more desperate. He told anyone who would listen that Germany had only a tiny window, perhaps no more than 23 fragile hours, to crush the Allied landing the moment it touched the sand. If those hours slipped away, if the Allies established even the smallest foothold, their vast factories, limitless fuel, and overwhelming air dominance would turn the tide of the war permanently. And then in the early hours of June 6th, as Rommel traveled hundreds of miles away to celebrate his wife's birthday, the sea itself seemed to ignite. Under the cover of night, thousands of ships, destroyers, battleships, transports, landing craft pushed through rough channel waters, forming a floating city of steel stretching from horizon to horizon. At dawn, the thunder began. Naval guns roared like God's awakening. Bombs fell in curtains of fire, and the beaches of Normandy erupted into a nightmare of death and courage. American troops were torn apart at Omaha, sometimes advancing inch by inch through smoke and blood. British forces stormed the sands under relentless machine gun fire. Canadians pushed forward through choking chaos and rising tides. And high above, Allied aircraft ruled the sky so completely that German troops called it the tyranny of the air. When Rommel returned and saw the coastline in flames, he understood instantly that the catastrophe he had predicted was unfolding exactly as he had feared. He begged for immediate counterattacks, demanded the panzer divisions be unleashed at once, knowing every minute mattered. But Hitler had slept through the first critical hours, and without his personal approval, the tanks remained frozen in place like iron statues. By the time they finally moved, Allied bombers descended upon them with merciless precision, turning roads into firestorms, choking fields with smoke and shattered metal. Hour by hour, Rommel's feared countdown ticked away. The Allies linked their beachheads, supplies flowed in endless waves, engineers carved new pathways through obstacles that had taken months to build, and German communications collapsed under the weight of confusion and bombardment. By the time the 23rd hour arrived, it was over. The window had closed forever. The Allies now possessed a firm grip on France, and with that grip came the slow, crushing power of an industrial giant whose victory had become inevitable. And so, as night settled over Normandy on that historic day, Rommel stood amid the ruins of his predictions, watching the horizon blaze with the glow of Allied fires and understanding with terrible certainty that the war for Germany had been decided not in weeks or months, but in those first few hours when his warnings were ignored. His legacy would become tangled in controversy, his loyalty questioned, his motives debated, but one haunting truth would endure through the decades. Rommel alone had seen the future clearly. D-Day was not merely an invasion, it was the judgment of history, and once those first boots hit the sand, the fate of the Reich was sealed, and the destiny of the world shifted forever.